The dust swirled around the small ranch as Maya wiped sweat from her forehead. The Arizona sun was merciless, beating down on everything like a hammer on an anvil. She had been working since before dawn, mending fences that her father should have fixed months ago. But Thomas was inside, like always, drinking his troubles away with cheap whiskey. Maya was 17, but she looked older. Life had a way of aging people fast out here in the territory. Her hands were rough from work, her back ached from carrying water buckets, and her heart carried bruises that never seemed to heal. 3 years had passed since her mother died of fever, and Thomas had been getting worse ever since. The ranch was failing. Everyone in Mesa Verde knew it. The cattle were thin, the fences were falling down, and the well was running dry. But Thomas blamed everyone except himself. He blamed the weather, the government, the Apache, and most of all, he blamed Maya. "You're just like your worthless mother," he would say, when the drink made him mean. "Can't do nothing right." Maya learned early to stay quiet when he got like that. Words only made things worse. She focused on keeping the ranch running, hoping that somehow things would get better. Hope was about all she had left. The trouble started that morning when old Peterson rode over from the next ranch. His face was red with anger, and he was shouting before he even got off his horse. "Your cattle are on my land again," he yelled. "I'm sick of this, Thomas. Control your animals or I'll shoot them myself." Maya's stomach dropped. She had checked the fences just yesterday, but she knew the north pasture gate was weak. She had asked her father for new hinges 3 times, but he always said they didn't have money for such things. Money for whiskey, yes. Money for fence repairs, no. Thomas stumbled out of the house, still wearing yesterday's clothes. His eyes were red and his breath smelled like a saloon. "What are you hollering about, Peterson?" "Your cattle. They're eating my grass and drinking from my water hole." "This is the 3rd time this month." Maya stepped forward carefully. "I can go get them right now, Mr. Peterson. I'll fix the gate too." But Thomas turned on her with fury in his eyes. "Shut your mouth. This is your fault, you lazy girl. I told you to fix that fence." "You told me to wait," Maya said quietly. "You said we couldn't afford new hinges." The slap came so fast she didn't see it coming. Her cheek burned and her eyes watered, but she didn't cry out. She had learned not to make sounds that might make him angrier. "Don't you dare talk back to me," Thomas snarled. "Get those cattle back here, and if I hear one more complaint from Peterson, you'll get worse than a slap." Peterson looked uncomfortable now. He was a hard man, but he had daughters of his own. "Now, Thomas, maybe we can work something out without—" "Mind your own business," Thomas snapped. "She's my daughter, and I'll handle her how I see fit." Maya walked toward the pasture, her cheek still stinging. Behind her, she could hear Peterson trying to calm her father down, but Thomas was already working himself into one of his rages. She knew how this would end. It always ended the same way. By the time she got the cattle back and fixed the gate with some old wire, the sun was setting. She was dirty, tired, and hungry. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, but Thomas had forbidden her from coming in the house until the work was done. When she finally walked through the door, she found him sitting at the kitchen table with an empty bottle beside him and a fresh one in his hand. His eyes were darker than usual, which meant trouble. "Too late," he said without looking up. "Dinner's cold. You can eat scraps like the worthless animal you are." Maya went to the stove and found a small pot of beans. They were cold and hard, but she was grateful to have anything. She ate standing up, watching her father drink and mutter to himself about ungrateful children and dead wives and failed dreams. "We got to go to town tomorrow," he said suddenly. "Need supplies," Maya nodded. Town meant people, and people meant Thomas would be on his best behavior. At least for a while. The next morning, they loaded their small wagon and headed to Mesa Verde. It wasn't much of a town. Just a trading post, a saloon, a church, and a few houses scattered around like seeds thrown by the wind. But it was the center of their world, the place where people came to trade, gossip, and pretend civilization had reached the territory. The trading post was busy when they arrived. Saturday was market day, and ranchers from all around came to buy supplies and catch up on news. Maya recognized most of the faces. There was Sheriff Collins, a decent man who tried to keep peace in an unpeaceable place. There was Mrs. Henderson, who ran the church and always smiled sadly at Maya. There was Dr. Morrison, young and hopeful, still believing he could heal all the hurt in the world. Thomas tied up the wagon and headed straight for the whiskey shelf. Maya made her way to the dry goods, counting their small amount of money carefully. They needed flour, coffee, and salt. Everything else would have to wait. She was measuring flour when she heard her father's voice getting louder. He was talking to a group of ranchers about cattle prices and government policies, but Maya could tell by his tone that he was looking for a fight. The problem with this territory, Thomas was saying, is nobody teaches their children respect anymore. Kids think they can do whatever they want without consequences. Maya felt her stomach tighten. She recognized that tone. He was building up to something. Take my own daughter, Thomas continued, his voice carrying across the store. Lazy as the day is long. Can't do simple work without messing it up. Yesterday she let our cattle wander all over Peterson's land because she was too lazy to fix a fence. The store got quieter. People were listening now, but not in a good way. Maya kept her eyes on the flour, measuring carefully, pretending she couldn't hear. Now, Thomas, Peterson said uncomfortably. It wasn't that big a problem. We worked it out. It was a problem because she made it a problem, Thomas said louder. Girl needs to learn that actions have consequences. Dr. Morrison cleared his throat. Children make mistakes. That's how they learn. Thomas turned toward the doctor, swaying slightly. Don't tell me how to raise my child, boy. You don't even have kids. Maya, get over here. Maya's hands shook as she put down the flour scoop. Every eye in the store was on her now. She walked slowly toward her father, hoping he would calm down, knowing he wouldn't. Tell everyone what you did yesterday, Thomas demanded. Maya kept her voice quiet and steady. The cattle got through a weak fence. I brought them back and fixed it. You let them get out in the first place because you're careless and lazy, Thomas said, his voice rising. And then you had the nerve to argue with me about it. I didn't argue, Maya said softly. I just explained what happened. The slap was harder this time, loud enough that people flinched. Maya's head snapped to the side and she tasted blood where her lips split against her teeth. Don't lie to me, girl, Thomas shouted. Everyone here saw Peterson come complaining about your carelessness. Maya touched her lip and looked around the store. Sheriff Collins was standing near the door, his hand resting on his gun belt. But he wasn't moving closer. Mrs. Henderson had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Dr. Morrison looked like he wanted to say something but didn't know what. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. This was family business, and family business was supposed to stay in the family, even when it happened in public. Thomas grabbed Maya's arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Maybe a public lesson will teach you some respect. He raised his hand again and Maya closed her eyes, waiting for the blow that would come. She had learned not to fight back, not to run, not to cry out. Fighting back only made things worse, but the blow didn't come. Instead, she heard a quiet voice speaking in accented English. Enough! Maya opened her eyes and saw a young Apache man standing just inside the store entrance. He was tall and lean, with long black hair and dark eyes that seemed to see everything. She had seen him before, trading at the post, but he usually kept to himself. Thomas turned, his hand still raised. This ain't your business, Indian. The Apache man stepped forward, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced worse things than angry drunks. His voice was calm but firm. She belongs to me now. The store went completely silent. Even Thomas seemed too shocked to speak. The Apache words that followed were soft but carried weight that Maya could feel even if she didn't understand them. Sheriff Collins finally found his voice. Now hold on there, Running Wolf. What exactly are you saying? The Apache man, Running Wolf, looked directly at Maya. His eyes were kind but serious. I claim protection rights. Apache custom. She comes with me. Thomas sputtered back to life. Like hell she does. She's my daughter. You can't just take her. I'm not taking, Running Wolf said patiently. I'm offering. Choice is hers. Every person in that store was staring at Maya now. Her father's face was red with rage and whiskey. The townspeople looked shocked and confused. Running Wolf waited quietly, his dark eyes steady on her face. Maya realized that for the first time in 3 years, someone was asking what she wanted, instead of telling her what she had to do. Her lip was bleeding, her arm ached where Thomas had grabbed her, and she could taste fear in the back of her throat. But she could also taste something else. Something that felt almost like hope. She looked at her father, who had raised her with fists instead of love. She looked at the townspeople who watched her. The ride away from Mesa Verde felt like entering a different world. Maya had never been this far from town before, and certainly never on horseback with an Apache warrior. Running Wolf guided his horse through paths she didn't even know existed, moving through the desert landscape like he was reading a familiar book. They rode in silence for the first hour. Maya held on carefully, still not quite believing what had happened. Every few minutes she expected to wake up and find herself back at the ranch, with Thomas yelling at her to get up and start her chores. But the horse beneath her was real, the sun on her shoulders was real, and the gentle, steady presence of Running Wolf was real too. Finally, he slowed the horse near a small stream, shaded by cottonwood trees. "We rest here," he said, sliding down from the saddle with easy grace. Maya climbed down less gracefully, her legs shaky from the unfamiliar ride and the events of the day. Running Wolf led the horse to the water and then sat down in the shade, patting the ground beside him. "You are hurt," he said, looking at her split lip and the bruises on her arm that were already starting to show purple. Maya touched her lip self-consciously. "It's not that bad." Running Wolf reached into a small leather pouch and pulled out some kind of plant. He crushed it between his fingers and mixed it with water from the stream. "This will help," he said, offering her the mixture. She hesitated. Everything she had ever been told about Apache people rushed through her mind. The stories, the warnings, the fear that settlers carried like a constant weight. But then she remembered how Thomas had raised his hand to hit her, and how Running Wolf had stepped forward when no one else would. She took the mixture and dabbed it on her lip. It stung at first, then felt cool and soothing. "Thank you," she said quietly. Running Wolf nodded and leaned back against a tree. "You have questions," he said. Maya had about 100 questions, but she wasn't sure where to start. "Why did you help me?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking out across the desert. "My grandmother, she teaches me that some things are wrong no matter who does them. Wrong to hurt those who cannot fight back. Wrong to watch suffering and do nothing. But I'm not Apache. I'm not even your friend. We don't know each other. Suffering is suffering," he said simply. "Pain is pain. Does not matter what color skin or what language or what family. When someone needs help, you help if you can." Maya studied his face. He looked to be about her age, maybe a year or two older. His English was good but careful, like he was translating thoughts from another language. There was something peaceful about him but also strong, like a river that looks calm on the surface but runs deep and powerful underneath. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go to my people. You meet my grandmother, Ayana. She decides if you can stay." Maya felt a flutter of worry. What if she says no? Running Wolf looked at her with something that might have been amusement. "She will not say no, but she will want to know why you choose to come and what you want from us." "I don't want anything," Maya said quickly. "I mean, I don't expect anything. I couldn't stay there anymore. My grandmother will understand. She has seen much suffering in her life. She knows the difference between people who run toward something and people who run away from something." "Which am I doing?" Running Wolf stood up and offered her his hand. "Both, I think. Come, we still have far to go." As they continued riding deeper into Apache territory, Running Wolf began to talk more. He told her about his band, led by his grandmother, who was a respected medicine woman. He explained that they lived peacefully, trading with some settlers and avoiding trouble with the cavalry when possible. "We are not the Apache your people fear," he said. "We do not raid or fight unless we must protect ourselves. We want only to live our own way on our own land." "Then why do people in town act so afraid?" Running Wolf was quiet for a while. "Fear makes people see enemies everywhere. And some Apache bands do fight. They have reasons. Soldiers killed their families, took their children, drove them from sacred places. But fighting brings more fighting. My grandmother teaches different way." Maya thought about this as they rode. She realized she had never really thought about Apache people as individuals with families and feelings and different opinions about how to live. In her world, they were just Indians. Dangerous, mysterious, always threatening, but rarely seen. The landscape began to change as they traveled. The flat desert gave way to rolling hills dotted with strange rock formations and hidden valleys. Running Wolf seemed to know every path and shortcut, guiding them around obstacles Maya would never have seen. As the sun began to set, they crested a hill, and Maya saw smoke rising from a small valley below. Her heart started beating faster. This was it. The Apache camp, the place where her new life would either begin or end. The camp was smaller than she had expected. Maybe 20 hide-covered shelters scattered around a central area where people were preparing the evening meal. Children played near the stream while women worked and men tended horses. It looked almost normal, like any other community of people trying to live their lives. But as they rode down into the valley, Maya became aware of eyes watching her. Conversations stopped. Children paused in their games. She felt like an intruder in a place where she clearly didn't belong. Running Wolf seemed to sense her nervousness. "They are curious," he said quietly. "White woman does not often choose to come here. They wonder what kind of person you are." "What kind of person am I?" Maya asked, more to herself than to him. "We will find out together," he replied. An older woman emerged from one of the larger shelters. She was small but carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her long gray hair was braided with beads and feathers, and her dark eyes seemed to see right through Maya. This had to be Ayanna, Running Wolf's grandmother. She spoke to Running Wolf in rapid Apache, her tone questioning but not angry. He responded respectfully, gesturing toward Maya several times. Maya sat on the horse feeling awkward and obvious, like a sore thumb in a place where everything else fit perfectly. Finally, Ayanna approached the horse and looked up at Maya. Her expression was unreadable, but not unfriendly. "Granddaughter," she said in English that was better than Running Wolf's, "you are welcome in our home. Come down." Maya slid off the horse and stood uncertainly. Ayanna walked slowly around her, studying her like she was examining a horse for sale. Maya tried not to fidget under that penetrating gaze. "You are hurt," Ayanna observed, touching Maya's bruised arm gently. "Her father beats her," Running Wolf explained. "In public with many people watching. No one helped." Ayanna's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger, but her voice remained calm. "Men who beat women are weak men. They are afraid of everything, so they try to make others afraid too." She gestured toward her shelter. "Come, we eat, we talk. Then we decide what comes next." Inside the shelter, Maya was surprised by how comfortable it felt. Woven mats covered the floor, and there were areas for cooking, sleeping, and storage. Everything had its place and everything looked cared for. It reminded her of how her mother used to keep house before the sickness took her. Ayanna served them a stew made from meat Maya didn't recognize, along with some kind of bread and roasted seeds. The food was different from what she was used to, but it was good. More importantly, it was served with kindness. As they ate, other members of the band began to gather outside. Maya could hear them talking quietly in Apache, occasionally laughing at something. It sounded like any group of neighbors catching up on the day's events. "Tell me about your mother," Ayanna said suddenly. The request surprised Maya. "My mother? Running Wolf says your father is a cruel man, but he must have married someone once. Tell me about her." Maya hadn't talked about her mother in years. Thomas refused to hear her name mentioned, and there was no one else to talk to. But sitting in this warm shelter with these kind strangers, the words began to flow. Her name was Elena. She was gentle and smart and always singing while she worked. She taught me to read and write. Even though Thomas said it was a waste of time for a girl, she used to say that knowledge was the one thing no one could take away from you. What happened to her? Fever took her 3 years ago. Thomas couldn't afford a real doctor, and I didn't know enough to help her. Maya's voice caught. She died asking me to be strong, to take care of myself. I don't think she knew what he would become after she was gone. Ayanna nodded slowly. Grief changes people. Some it makes kinder because they understand suffering. Others it makes cruel because they want to share their pain with the world. Thomas was never really kind, Maya admitted. But he got much worse after Mother died. It was like losing her broke something inside him. And now he wants to break everyone else too. And now you are here, Ayanna said. Far from everything you know, with people you were taught to fear. Are you afraid? Maya thought about the question seriously. I should be afraid. But I'm not really. I was more afraid every day at home, never knowing when the next beating would come or how bad it would be. Fear of known danger is worse than fear of unknown possibility, Ayanna agreed. Here you do not know what will happen, but you know it will not be what was happening there. Outside, someone began playing a flute, a haunting melody that seemed to match the desert wind. Maya woke before dawn to the sound of women moving quietly around the camp. For a moment she forgot where she was and reached instinctively for her work boots, expecting to hear Thomas shouting for breakfast. Then she remembered. She was safe. She was free. And she was about to begin the hardest education of her life. Ayanna appeared at the entrance to her small sleeping area with a cup of something that smelled like herbs and honey. Drink, she said simply. It will give you strength for the day. The liquid was bitter but warming. As Maya sipped it, she watched through the shelter opening as the camp came alive. Children fed horses while women prepared food and men checked weapons and tools. Everyone seemed to know exactly what they were supposed to do and when to do it. Maya felt like the only lost person in a world of certainty. Come, Ayana said when Maya finished drinking. Learning begins now. The first lesson was language. Ayana sat Maya down with a group of children and began teaching her basic Apache words. At first, Maya felt embarrassed learning alongside 6-year-olds who giggled when she mispronounced things. But the children were patient teachers, repeating words over and over until Maya could say them correctly. Water is 2, said a little girl named Morning Star. Say it. 2. 2, Maya repeated. Good. Now horse is key. Fire is gone. Sun is Johona. Maya's head spun trying to remember all the new sounds, but slowly, word by word, she began to build a small vocabulary. By midday, she could ask for water, thank someone for food, and say good morning. The physical work was harder than the language lessons. Ayana assigned Maya to help the women gather plants, and Maya quickly learned that surviving in the desert required knowledge she had never imagined. Every plant had a purpose, some for food, some for medicine, some for making tools or shelter. This is desert broom, explained a woman named Silver Moon, showing Maya a tough, woody shrub. We use the branches for baskets and brooms. But be careful. Pick wrong time of year and it is too brittle. Maya nodded, trying to remember everything. She had thought she knew about hard work from her years on the ranch, but this was different. Every task required not just effort, but understanding. You had to know which plants were safe to eat, how to find water, how to read weather signs, how to move quietly through dangerous territory. The other women were kind but reserved. They watched Maya carefully, waiting to see if this strange white girl would give up when things got difficult. Maya tried her best to prove herself, working harder than necessary and never complaining even when thorns cut her hands or the sun burned her shoulders. Running Wolf appeared periodically throughout the day, checking on her progress. He seemed pleased that she was trying so hard to learn, but Maya could see concern in his eyes. The other women talk, he told her during a brief rest. Some wonder if you are a spy sent by soldiers. Others think you will run back to White World when life here gets hard. What do you think? Maya asked. I think you are stronger than you know, but strength alone is not enough. You must also want to belong here, not just escape from there. His words stayed with Maya as the day continued. Was she running towards something or just running away? Did it matter as long as she was trying to build a better life? The answer became clearer during the evening meal. As the band gathered around the central fire sharing food and stories, Maya realized she felt more at home than she had in years. These people worked together, supported each other, and treated everyone with respect. Even the children had voices in the community discussions. It was nothing like her life with Thomas, where fear ruled every interaction and anger poisoned every conversation. Here, when someone disagreed with a decision, they talked it through until they found a solution everyone could accept. When someone needed help, others stepped forward without being asked. After the meal, Ayana took Maya aside for their first serious conversation about Apache beliefs and customs. Understanding our language and learning our work is important, she said as they sat by a small fire outside her shelter. But becoming one of us requires understanding our heart, our way of thinking about the world. She picked up a handful of desert sand and let it run through her fingers. White people see the earth as something to own, to use, to change. We see it as our mother, who feeds us and shelters us and teaches us how to live. We take what we need, but we always give back. Maya thought about the way Thomas had treated their ranch, using up the land, letting the cattle overgraze, cutting down trees without replanting. How do you give back to the earth? Many ways. We plant seeds when we gather plants. We never take all the fruit from one tree or all the medicine from one place. We ask permission before we hunt, and we use every part of what we kill. We understand that everything is connected. Hurt one thing, you hurt everything. It was a completely different way of thinking about life. Maya had grown up believing that humans were meant to control nature, to fight against it and bend it to their will. The Apache way seemed gentler but also more complex. It sounds beautiful, Maya said, but also hard to learn. All worthwhile things are hard to learn, Ayana replied. Easy things have no value. As the days passed, Maya began to understand what she meant. Learning. Apache customs wasn't just about memorizing rules. It was about changing the way she thought about herself and her place in the world. She learned that Apache women had much more freedom than white women. They could own property, make important decisions, even become leaders or medicine women. But they also had more responsibilities. Everyone in the band depended on everyone else for survival. She learned about the complex relationships between different Apache bands, some peaceful and some hostile to whites. Running Wolf's band was known for avoiding conflict, but that didn't mean they were weak. They had simply chosen a different path to survival. Most importantly, she learned about the constant pressure they lived under from the U.S. government and hostile settlers. Soldiers patrolled constantly, looking for excuses to force Apache people onto reservations. White ranchers and miners wanted Apache land and didn't care how they got it. Every day we choose, Ayana explained. Fight and probably die or try to live peacefully and hope others let us alone. Either choice is safe. Maya began to understand the courage it had taken for Running Wolf to interfere with her beating. He hadn't just been helping one abused girl. He had been risking his entire band's safety by drawing attention from hostile whites. 2 weeks after her arrival, that risk became real. Maya was gathering berries with Morningstar when they heard horses approaching fast. The little girl grabbed Maya's hand and pulled her toward a cluster of rocks where they could hide and watch. A group of cavalry soldiers was riding hard toward the camp, dust clouds marking their approach like a war banner. Maya's stomach clenched as she recognized the lieutenant leading them, James Crawford, a young officer who was known in Mesa Verde for his hatred of all Indian people. "Stay hidden," Morningstar whispered. "Soldiers are bad medicine." But Maya could see that Running Wolf and several other men were riding out to meet the soldiers before they reached the camp. She knew this was somehow connected to her presence here, and she couldn't let others face danger because of her choices. "I have to go," she told Morningstar. "Tell Ayana what happened." Before the child could stop her, Maya was running toward the confrontation. She could hear shouting voices carrying on the desert air, and her heart hammered as she recognized one of them. Thomas was with the soldiers. By the time Maya reached the group, the confrontation was already heated. Lieutenant Crawford was demanding that the Apache turn over the kidnapped white woman, while Running Wolf calmly insisted that Maya had come willingly and was free to leave. "Any time she chose. That's my daughter," Thomas shouted, his face red with fury and drink. "These savages stole her from me." "Nobody stole me," Maya said loudly, stepping into the circle of men. "I chose to leave because you beat me." The soldiers turned to stare at her, and she realized what a sight she must make. Her skin was brown from the sun. Her hair hung loose in Apache style, and she wore traditional clothing. She looked more Indian than white. "Maya." Thomas started toward her, but Running Wolf moved smoothly to block his path. Lieutenant Crawford studied Maya with cold blue eyes. "Are you being held against your will, miss?" "No, sir. I came here by my own choice." "That's impossible," Crawford said. "No white woman would choose to live with Indians unless she was forced or had lost her mind." Maya felt anger burning in her chest. "I'm not crazy, Lieutenant. I'm just tired of being beaten by a drunk who thinks he owns me," Thomas exploded. "You ungrateful little witch! After everything I did for you, I fed you and clothed you and put a roof over your head." "You beat me every day," Maya replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "You drank away the money we needed for food and repairs. You blame me for everything that went wrong in your life. I disciplined you when you needed it," Thomas snarled. "That's a father's right and duty." "Look at her arms," Running Wolf said quietly to the lieutenant. "Still bruises from last beating. That is not discipline. That is cruelty." Crawford looked at Maya's arms where the purple marks were still visible. His expression didn't change, but Maya saw something flicker in his eyes. "Doubt, maybe." "Regardless," Crawford said finally, "you're a white woman." 3 months had passed since Lieutenant Crawford's visit, and Maya had begun to believe the worst was behind them. She could now speak basic Apache conversation, had learned to weave baskets and prepare traditional foods, and felt truly at home with Running Wolf's band. The nightmares about Thomas had faded, replaced by dreams of a future she was building with her own hands. She should have known peace wouldn't last. The trouble started with rumors from traders who visited the camp. They brought word that stories were spreading in Mesa Verde and other settlements. Stories about white women being held captive by Apache bands. about Indian raids on isolated ranches, about the need for stronger military action to protect settlers. Maya knew these stories were about her, even though they bore little resemblance to her actual life. In the rumors, she was a prisoner. The Apache were savages. Running Wolf was a brutal kidnapper. The truth seemed to matter less than the fear the stories generated. "Bad times coming," Ayana said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Fear makes people do terrible things. Makes them see enemies where there are only neighbors." Maya had learned to trust Ayana's instincts about danger. The old woman had lived through decades of conflict between Apache people and white settlers. She could read the signs that others missed. "What kind of bad times?" Maya asked. "Government pressure. Maybe soldiers come back with bigger force. Maybe settlers decide to take justice into their own hands." Ayana poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks into the dark sky. "Your presence here gives them excuse they have been looking for." Maya felt guilt twist in her stomach. "Should I leave? I never wanted to bring danger to your people." "Too late for that," Running Wolf said, joining them at the fire. "Danger was always here. You just gave it a face to focus on." He sat down beside Maya, close enough that she could feel the warmth from his body. Over the months, their relationship had deepened from mutual respect to genuine affection. Not romance exactly, both of them were too careful for that, but something deeper than friendship. "Besides," he continued, "you are our people now. We do not abandon family when trouble comes." The next morning brought news that made Ayana's prediction seem optimistic. A trader named Henderson arrived with urgent information. A group of ranchers led by Thomas had petitioned the territorial governor for military action against rogue Apache bands harboring white captives. The governor, facing political pressure to appear strong on Indian policy, had authorized a major cavalry expedition. 3 companies of soldiers, Henderson reported quietly. "Maybe 100 men. They're saying it's a rescue mission, but everyone knows it's about forcing Apache bands onto reservations." Maya's blood ran cold. 100 soldiers meant this wasn't about her anymore. It was about using her situation as an excuse to attack peaceful Apache people who had done nothing wrong. "How long do we have?" Running Wolf asked. "Week, maybe 2. They're gathering supplies and waiting for reinforcements from Fort Apache." After Henderson left, the band held an emergency council. Maya sat with the other women, listening as the men debated their options. They could scatter into smaller groups and hide in the mountains. They could send messengers to other bands and try to organize joint resistance. They could attempt to negotiate with the soldiers before any fighting started. Or they could send Maya back to prevent the military action entirely. "It's the obvious solution," said a warrior, named Blackhawk. "Give the soldiers what they came for, and maybe they leave the rest of us alone." "It's no solution at all," Running Wolf replied angrily. "Maya is family now. We do not trade family to save ourselves trouble. Better one person suffers than the whole band is destroyed," Blackhawk shot back. The argument grew heated, with other voices joining on both sides. Maya listened to people she had come to love debating whether to sacrifice her to save themselves, and she understood their position even as it broke her heart. Finally, Ayana stood up. When she spoke, everyone listened. "This decision is not ours to make," she said simply. "Maya must choose her own path. We will support whatever she decides." All eyes turned to Maya. She felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Whatever she chose would have consequences for everyone in the camp. "I need time to think," she said. That night, Maya walked alone into the desert, trying to find clarity in the vast stillness. The stars seemed unusually bright, and the night air carried the scent of sage and possibility. She thought about her life before Running Wolf, the fear, the pain, the hopelessness that had defined every day. Then she thought about her life now, the sense of belonging, the work that had meaning, the family she had never expected to find. If she went back to white society, would she save the band from military action? Probably not. Men like Lieutenant Crawford and the territorial governor weren't really interested in rescuing one abused white woman. They wanted to remove Apache people from valuable land, and they would find other excuses if this one disappeared. But if she stayed, would her presence make things worse for the people she had come to love? Almost certainly. When she returned to camp, she found Running Wolf waiting for her by the dying fire. "Have you decided?" he asked quietly. "I think so. But first I need to ask you something." Maya sat down beside him, gathering her courage. If our situations were reversed, if you were the one bringing danger to my family, what would you do? Running Wolf was quiet for a long time. I would want to protect the people I love, he said finally, even if it meant sacrificing my own happiness. That's what I thought you'd say. But, he continued, I also know that sometimes the brave thing and the right thing are different things. Brave might be facing danger to protect others. Right might be refusing to let evil people force you into choices you don't want to make. Maya understood what he was saying. If she returned to Thomas and white society, she would be giving victory to the same people who had watched her being beaten and done nothing to help. She would be saying that their prejudices were more important than her safety and happiness. What if there was a third choice? She asked. What do you mean? What if instead of running or hiding, we faced the situation directly? What if I went to the soldiers not as a captive being returned, but as an Apache woman defending her people? Running Wolf stared at her. That would be very dangerous. They might not listen to you. They might arrest you or force you to go back to your father. They might. But they also might realize that their assumptions about Indian people are wrong, that peaceful bands like ours aren't the enemy they're looking for. And if they don't realize that, Maya smiled, feeling something like peace settling over her. Then at least we tried to solve this the right way instead of just running from it. The next morning, Maya presented her plan to the council. She would ride to intercept the cavalry column before it reached Apache territory. She would tell her story, the real story, not the distorted version that had been spreading through the settlements. She would make it clear that she was with the Apache by choice, and that military action against peaceful bands was both unnecessary and wrong. Most of the council thought it was too risky. Blackhawk argued that soldiers wouldn't listen to a woman, especially one who had gone native. Others worried that it would just provoke the military to act more harshly, but Ayanna supported the plan. Sometimes the best way to stop a lie is to tell the truth loudly enough that everyone can hear it. Running Wolf volunteered to accompany Maya, but she refused. This is something I need to do alone. If you're with me, they'll see you as a threat. If I'm alone, they'll have to listen to what I'm saying. 2 days later, Maya rode out from camp wearing her finest Apache dress and carrying a white flag of truce. Her heart pounded as she followed the old military road toward Mesa Verde, but her resolve remained firm. She had found her true family, and she wasn't going to let anyone destroy it without a fight. She found the cavalry column camped near a waterhole 20 miles from the Apache territory. 3 companies of soldiers, just as Henderson had reported, along with supply wagons and artillery pieces. It was clearly meant to be overwhelming force, designed to crush any resistance before it could organize. Maya rode slowly toward the camp, her white flag clearly visible. Sentries spotted her when she was still a mile away, and she could see commotion spreading through the camp as word of her approach spread. By the time she reached the perimeter, Lieutenant Crawford was waiting for her with a squad of armed soldiers. His expression was a mixture of surprise and suspicion. Well, he said as Maya dismounted, the famous captive comes to us willingly. Have you finally come to your senses? I've come to prevent a mistake, Maya replied calmly. May I speak with your commanding officer? Crawford studied her appearance, the traditional dress, the confident posture, the lack of any obvious distress. You don't look much like a captive. That's because I'm not one. I'm an Apache woman who used to be white, and I'm here to speak for my people. Crawford's jaw tightened. You're confused, miss. You're a white woman who's been living with Indians. There's a difference. The difference is in how you choose to see yourself and how others choose to see you, Maya replied. I know who I am. Do you know who you are, Lieutenant? Are you a protector of innocent people, or are you someone? The ride to the Apache camp was tense and silent. Maya led the way, followed by Colonel Morrison and a squad of 12 soldiers. Lieutenant Crawford rode beside the colonel, his face set in disapproving lines. Maya could feel his hostility like heat from a fire, but she kept her focus on the path ahead and the conversation that would determine the fate of everyone she had come to love. As they crested the final hill overlooking the valley, Maya saw that the camp was ready for them. The Apache had arranged themselves with careful dignity, not hiding but not appearing threatening either. Children played near their mothers, men worked on weapons and tools with casual confidence, and elders sat in places of honor where visitors would see them first. Running Wolf stepped forward as the group dismounted. Maya felt proud of how he carried himself, respectful but not subservient, strong but not aggressive. He wore his finest clothes and had painted ceremonial symbols on his face, marking this as an important occasion. "Welcome to our home," he said in clear English, addressing Colonel Morrison directly. "I am Running Wolf, leader of this band. This woman you seek is my sister in all ways that matter." Colonel Morrison studied the camp with professional eyes, taking in the neat arrangement of shelters, the well-cared-for horses, the healthy children. Maya could see him comparing what he observed with whatever stories he had been told about savage Indian camps. "I'm Colonel Morrison, United States Army. I've come to investigate reports that you're holding a white woman against her will." "No one is held here against their will," Running Wolf replied calmly. "Maya came to us seeking protection from a cruel father. We gave her sanctuary, as our customs require when someone suffers unjustly." Ayana emerged from her shelter, moving with the careful dignity that came from decades of leadership. She approached the colonel without fear, though Maya knew she must be worried about what his presence meant for the band's safety. "Colonel," she said in her careful English, "you are welcome in our home. Will you share food with us? It is our way to feed guests before discussing difficult matters." Morrison glanced at Crawford, who shook his head slightly, but the colonel had been on the frontier long enough to understand the importance of accepting hospitality when it was offered in good faith. "Thank you. We would be honored." What followed was one of the most surreal meals of Maya's life. Soldiers who had come prepared to fight found themselves sitting around a fire, sharing stew and bread with the very people they had been sent to attack. Apache women served food with quiet grace while their children watched the visitors with curious eyes. Maya noticed Colonel Morrison paying attention to everything: the way families interacted, the respect shown to elders, the obvious care given to children and animals. She could see him revising his expectations with each observation. During the meal, Ayana spoke about the band's history, their attempts to live peacefully alongside white settlers, and the challenges they faced from both hostile Apache groups and aggressive cavalry units. "We do not raid," she said simply. "We do not steal cattle or attack travelers. We hunt, we gather, we trade with honest men, and we try to avoid trouble with those who seek it." "Then how do you explain the attacks on settlements?" Lieutenant Crawford interrupted. "The stolen livestock? The murdered travelers?" An older Apache man named Gray Eagle answered. "Other bands, not us. Apache people are not one tribe with one leader. We are many bands with different ways of living. Some choose war path. We choose peace path. But soldiers often cannot tell difference." Morrison nodded slowly. Maya could see understanding growing in his eyes. "How many people are in your band?" 37, Running Wolf replied. 12 fighting men, 15 women, 10 children. We harm no one, and we ask only to be left alone to live our own way." After the meal, Ayana invited Morrison to walk through the camp. Maya accompanied them, watching as the colonel observed daily life up close. He saw women teaching children to weave and identify medicinal plants. He watched men crafting tools and maintaining weapons not for war but for hunting and protection. He noticed the careful way resources were shared and decisions were made through discussion rather than force. At one point, they paused near a group of children playing a game that involved quick thinking and cooperation. Morrison smiled as he watched them, and Maya realized he was seeing them as children first, Apache children second. "They seem happy," he observed. "They are free to be children here," Maya said. "They learn skills they need for survival, but they also play and laugh and dream about their futures." "That's more than many children get in white settlements." Morrison glanced at her. "Is that a criticism of your own people?" "It's an observation about all people," Maya replied carefully. "Some places and families treat children well, others don't. It has less to do with race than it does with character." As the afternoon wore on, Maya could see Morrison's resolve weakening. It was one thing to attack an abstract enemy based on reports and rumors. It was much harder to justify violence against specific people who had welcomed you into their homes and shared their food. Lieutenant Crawford seemed to sense this shift and grew more agitated. "Colonel, we can't let sentiment interfere with our mission. These people could be lying about their peaceful intentions." "Could be," Morrison agreed. "But I need evidence, not assumptions." The moment of truth came when Thomas arrived. Maya heard the commotion before she saw him, shouting voices and the sound of a horse being ridden hard. She turned toward the noise and felt her stomach drop as her father appeared at the edge of camp, accompanied by Sheriff Collins and 2 other men from Mesa Verde. Thomas looked worse than she remembered. His clothes were dirty, his hair unkempt, and his eyes held the wild look of a man who had been drinking heavily for months. When he saw Maya, his face twisted with rage and something that might have been grief. "There she is," he shouted, pointing at Maya. "My daughter. See what these savages have done to her?" Maya looked down at herself, trying to see what Thomas saw. Her Apache dress was beautifully made and well-fitted. Her hair was clean and braided with care. Her skin was healthy from good food and outdoor work. She looked better than she had in years. "I see a woman who looks healthy and well cared for," Colonel Morrison said quietly. "She's been brainwashed," Thomas insisted. "Turned against her own people. This isn't my daughter anymore." Sheriff Collins looked embarrassed. "Thomas, maybe we should let Maya speak for herself." But Thomas was beyond listening. Months of drinking and self-pity had rotted away whatever restraint he might have had. He dismounted and started toward Maya, his hands reaching for her. "You're coming home with me right now, girl. I don't care what these Indians have told you or what soldiers think. You belong to me." Running Wolf stepped smoothly between Thomas and Maya. "She belongs to herself," he said calmly, "and she has chosen to stay here. Get out of my way, Indian," Thomas snarled, reaching for the gun on his belt. The change in the camp was instant. Apache men appeared from seemingly nowhere, their hands on their weapons but not drawing them yet. The soldiers readied their rifles, suddenly tense. What had been a peaceful conversation was about to become a battle. "Nobody draws a weapon," Colonel Morrison commanded sharply. "We're going to settle this like civilized people." He turned to Maya. "Miss Mitchell, I need you to answer one question clearly, in front of everyone here. Are you being held against your will?" Maya looked around the circle of faces. Thomas red with rage and desperation. Crawford, hoping she would say yes so he could justify the violence he wanted. The Apache people who had become her family. And Colonel Morrison, trying to make the right decision in an impossible situation. "No," she said clearly. "I am here by my own free choice. I stay because these people treat me with kindness and respect. I stay because I've found a home where I'm valued for my work and my character, not controlled by fear and violence." "That's a lie," Thomas shouted. "They've poisoned your mind against your own blood." Maya stepped forward, facing her father directly for the first time since that day in the trading post. "You poisoned my mind against you, Thomas. Every beating, every drunken rage, every time you blamed me for your failures. These people didn't have to convince me to leave you. You convinced me yourself." Thomas's face crumpled. For a moment, Maya saw not an angry drunk but a broken man who had lost everything he cared about and didn't understand why. "I'm your father," he whispered. "I raised you. I took care of you after your mother died." "You hurt me," Maya replied gently. "Every day for 3 years you hurt me. Not because I deserved it, but because you were in pain and didn't know any other way to deal with it." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm sorry for your pain, Thomas. I'm sorry Mother died. I'm sorry the ranch failed. I'm sorry your dreams didn't work out, but I can't let your pain destroy my life anymore." The silence that followed was broken by Sheriff Collins clearing his throat. "Thomas, I think it's time to go home. I'm not leaving without my daughter." "Yes, you are." Collins's voice was firm but not unkind. "Maya is old enough to make her own choices. She's not being held captive. She's not being mistreated. She's chosen to live with people who care about her welfare." He looked at Maya with something that might have been respect,